Hey guys, it's Theo again, and we're back at it again with another NOM Studios podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest that's here for a pretty good conversation that we've had that all of us always has. What we want to start out is that most high performers don't burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they're successful. They've trained themselves to function at unsustainable levels for years, and by the time burnout hits, the damage is real. So today, did I say that well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, our guest is Corrie. How do you say your last name?
Logitis. Everybody
Logitis?
just calls me Corrie Lo, though.
Okay, I like that.
It's a little bit easier to find me online that way.
All right, our guest today is Corrie Logitis, or Corrie Logo, keynote speaker for Michelin, National Grid, US Bank, TEDx speaker, Forbes-featured, and her new book, The 5 Overwhelm Culprits, drops in a couple of days. She's going to tell us why there's almost never a time management problem. It's a systems problem, a boundary problem, and a leadership problem, and how to spot it before it costs you your health, your team, and your career. So, hey, Corrie, how you doing?
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So start off by telling us about your journey.
Oh boy. All right. So it actually starts off with a really expensive piece of paper. So I went to college for fine art. I could draw very well. And that said, so when I graduated, I didn't really have any job prospects. I was waiting tables. I really annoyed my dad, who helped bankroll said piece of paper. So he's like, why don't you come work for the family business? You could start as a graphic designer and then from there decide what it is that you want to do. So I figure I'll go there. It's going to be kind of like a, short-term thing and I'll figure out where I'm going from there. And I more or less blink my eyes. It's 15 years later and I'm running the whole operation as senior vice president.
Oh.
I was always the youngest person in the room. I was always the only woman. We were in electronics distribution, so a very male-dominated industry. And I loved the work that I did. I loved the people I was working with. But I went through, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, I went through a period of 5 years where I experienced more traumatic events than most people experience in a lifetime. And during that time frame, one of the events was I became very suddenly a single mom of an infant. And certain things that were manageable before suddenly became impossible after. Like I was commuting 20 hours a week back and forth to Brooklyn from Long Island. And I remember one day sitting in my car and adding up the number of hours I was paying my au pair to watch my kid while I sat in the car. And I'm like, this is just completely unsustainable. And even with it being my family business, because of the way that corporate structure is, it's like, no, it's 9 to 5. You're in the office. This was before the pandemic. And ultimately what ended up happening was I had one more, I guess you can call it pivotal life moment where I lost a loved one to suicide. And I was that was a big wake up moment for me where I was like, you know what? Time is valuable. Time is finite. What are you doing with your life, Corrie? It's time to change things from here. And in the middle of all of this, I had a therapist I was working with who had noticed how quickly I was able to overcome these certain traumas, even while still working through it. And while I was more or less, complaining to her about my commute, she was talking to me about potentially changing careers. And she had suggested, why don't you become a coach? Which I thought she was nuts. And the reason why is because she explained to me, you're able to continue to take action, even though you're going through all this stuff and you still are a high performer at work, at home. Just to give you some examples, following my divorce, I left an abusive relationship. And within 6 months, I had already gone from, penniless to buying a home out here on Long Island. I had gotten a promotion at work. I had landed a few big projects. I was dating again, and only in 6 months, right? So my therapist was like, my other patients can't do this.
Are you even giving yourself time? Like, how are you getting through all of that?
Well, that's the thing. And she's like, if you could figure out how you're able to do this, you can impact a lot of lives. So after that suicide loss, it really made me go back and think, you know what? This is the time to do it, if anything. And I quit my job. I called it an emergency of my soul. I banked in all my emergency savings to start it because it's really scary to do that when you have a mortgage and an infant and everything's on you, as a single mom. And long story short, within pretty much a year of starting my business, I went from having no followers to over 40,000 followers online. I spoke at TEDx. I had landed multiple clients. So I figured out what it was that that allowed me to be able to continue regardless of how I was overwhelmed. And the way that I did it was I compared, okay, what were the, I guess you could say the patterns that were happening during like my abusive marriage and the divorce and all of that. And then I applied that to post-suicide loss. And that allowed me to do it. And it was what I now call the 5 Overwhelm Culprits. That was my first TEDx talk that happened within the year after I started my business. And ever since then, it's been, coaching and speaking on that framework.
So continuing on that framework, I mean, why do high performers burn out faster than everybody else? Like, I feel like as a fellow high performer, why don't we see that coming when we kind of see it with everybody else?
Well, here's the thing, because it doesn't show up the same for us, right? So you expect burnout to show up as being really kind of frenetic, all over the place, kind of like chaos. For high performers, it shows up very differently because we have a higher capacity to begin with. So it shows up more as disengagement. It shows up more as we're continuing to spin our wheels on projects that aren't quite working out the way that they should be. We start getting frustrated that, we're putting in the work and the effort, but not getting the results that we want. And truth is that has more to do with alignment than with your actual performance. And that's how we burn out, right? Because we're constantly going, but we're not taking a moment to sit back and say, hey, is this actually in alignment with what it is I want and what I value? Like, why am I doing this? Instead, we're much more focused on what needs to be done.
Is that what you mean by this? It's not a time management problem?
Exactly. Yeah, no, really, anytime people get overwhelmed, it's not a reflection of you as an individual. It simply means that you need to change something in your current strategy to match your current reality, right? Because when you think about it, anytime you get overwhelmed, usually you're not overwhelmed to start because you're taking action, you're going through day in and day out, you're going through your normal routine, everything's fine, but then something changes and that change disrupts what you were doing before, then it suddenly isn't working anymore. So all you need to do is identify, okay, well, what was it that changed? And then adapt your strategy for it.
How did you have the sense to see this in yourself as you're going through everything, to know how to put like these 5 things together, to know that it's not just tell me about like how you walked yourself through it before you're able to walk me through it like you're doing right now?
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot of it was just kind of looking at my past experiences, what they taught me and what the patterns were, right? So for a lot, and I share a lot of these stories in the book, it all stemmed from my post-divorce period after I left an abusive marriage. What were the roadblocks, right? During that time frame that prevented me from being able to move forward. And because I was able to move forward so fast, I needed to look at, okay, well, what was it I addressed, in that time frame to help me move that quickly? And it was very repeatedly the same 5 things.
Okay. And what are those 5 things?
Yeah, this is a great time to go about it. They're very, very simple. They all begin with the letter C.
The culprits. That's what
the culprits.
Okay.
And they are lack of any one of these 5 things. The first one is lack of clarity, right? So this kind of goes back to that alignment thing we were talking about before. It's not so much knowing what it is you want to do or, what's important. It's knowing why that's important. So clarity, first and foremost, is kind of like the foundational culprit. After that, there's lack of confidence, right? So it's not so much knowing what it is you want to do and why it's important. You have to believe that you could do or have it, right? So that sense of belief. And so many people, they don't trust themselves, right? This is why we have so much, a lot of times when it comes to high performance, people talk about fear of failure, stuff like that. It's because they don't trust. Then the third one is lack of community. The famous motivational speaker, Jim Rohn, once said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Correct.
Right? So if you are purposely curating the people around you and they don't know, what it is you want to do, how to get there, or are going to support you because it doesn't benefit them in some way, shape, or form, it's going to hold you back. From there, there's lack of conditioning. So when I talk about lack of conditioning, it's actually your physical and mental health and wellness. How are you taking care of your mind and your body? For working moms and working women like myself, that's usually the first thing to go out the door because we're always so focused on everybody else around us instead of ourselves. But when you look at high performers, even, athletes, for example, that is so important for them to be able to function at a high level. It's the same thing for us in leadership, because if you are not focused on your mind and your body, you become the bottleneck in every single system
it's
that
like
you're
the
in.
airline, put on your mask first.
Exactly. And then the last culprit is lack of consistency. So if the actions that you were taking today were sufficient to get you where you want to be tomorrow, you'd already be there, right? So it's always the compounding efforts day in and day out doing the same things that get you those results. And the way that you get there is through having consistent habits, routines, systems, SOPs. You need to be able to design your systems to accommodate you on your worst day, like I did during the divorce and everything else. All of my systems were designed for my worst day, but they also helped me perform at my best. Whereas most people, when they think about designing systems, they think about designing at your peak. And really, that's not the best way to go.
Okay, so I mean, let's go back a little bit to working in your family business for 15 years. That was done before you came up with these 5 culprits, before all that clarity. 15 years, that was before your divorce or during your divorce?
Good question. That was probably around the last year or so.
Okay.
Was around the divorce.
Okay.
Maybe 2 or 3 years, yeah.
And so from there, you divorced, you moved out to Long Island, you started dating again, but then you lost your partner that you were dating
My post-divorce partner, yes.
Post-divorce partner to suicide. Man, that's a lot
It
to
is
go
a lot
through.
in a 5-year time span, yeah.
And your daughter or son?
I have 2 kids now.
Okay.
So my son was my infant when I had the divorce. Spoiler alert, during the pandemic, I went from being a single mom of 1 to a married mom of 4 in a year.
Okay.
So I now have a daughter and 2 stepsons as well.
Not kidding, high performer. It's just like...
Yeah, across the board. It's like if I say I'm going to do something, I go all in.
How did all that change define how you perceive success?
For me, success is not necessarily tied to effort at this point. I actually, in the dedication of my book,
Show your book.
How did I word it? Here.
That's a cover right there.
It is, I noted for my children, so you never have to confuse exhaustion with success. I think so many people, they view success as, money and the things that we have and the titles that we have. And it's really not about that. For me, it's about what impact do you have? Whether it be how I'm modeling leadership in life for my children or how I'm modeling it for other people. That is my definition of success.
Okay.
Now, that's definitely changed from back when I was working for my family, because back then part of my disconnect and why I was talking about my horrendous commute with my therapist was I was feeling weird and I couldn't figure out why, because I had everything that you're supposed to have. I had a career, I had a great house, I had the white picket fence, I had the kid, I had everything that was the definition of success, but it didn't feel fulfilling. And the reason why, which became my why, is because even though I was with my family business, which for me, family is a very important value for me. So I figured that was checked off. Like, hey, I'm with my family every day. But it took me away from my son, right? That 20 hours a week I was spending commuting, I could have been spending with him.
Yeah.
And that was a big disconnect for me.
Yeah. Is that part of that invisible workload that you talk about?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the invisible workload really comes more specifically for women in leadership, because when you think about it, women compared to men, if you're looking at, let's just say we're at, corporation, whatever, and then you have an SVP that's a woman, an SVP that's a man. 9 times out of 10, the woman is responsible for, herself mentally, physically, all that. She's also responsible for the well-being of her team. But in comparison to the man, more times than not, the man isn't also taken care of in the same manner in terms of their household, right? So the woman is also taking care of the mental load in their home, sometimes for their spouse, making doctor's appointments and whatever else, as well as all their children. So the mental load in leadership in particular is very lopsided when you look at men versus women.
That is very true. That is very true. I mean, what else adds to that invisible workload?
All the little things that you don't think about each day that get done, like miraculously. Even here's a great example, because today was my daughter's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
So this morning we had a birthday party. So you don't think about, in addition to everything that we're doing at work, I'm also sending out invitations for a party, ordering a cake, I'm picking up a cake, I'm booking the venue, I'm researching venues, I'm figuring out which venue it is to go with, I'm then picking that. A lot of times, my husband's very engaged, so we'll pick and choose. But for a lot of households, that division is not as clean, that they're not dividing up that labor. But that's additional labor over and above what you're doing at work, and even what you're doing just in your household, right? So that's what I mean in terms of mental load. How are you remembering all the other little tasks that have to happen? A lot of times I have checklists. I have different kind of digital tools and stuff that I build too, so that you're not constantly having to start from scratch with all those decisions. So as a great example for birthday parties, I do all my project management in Asana.
Okay.
So I have a template in Asana that's, here's all the little things that we have to do every time one of my 4 kids has a birthday party. And so I don't have to actually try to recall and remember it. It's just there. So it makes it easier. And I can also delegate too. So it makes it easier for me to be like, Mike's my husband. Okay, you can handle, this part. And divide and conquer.
Definitely helps with the decision fatigue.
Yes.
So, what is the number one pattern you see when you work with Fortune 500 leadership teams? You see in the burnout executives?
Oh man. Number one would more likely be clarity. Pops up a lot because a lot of times folks, when they think about clarity, they're thinking about everybody else and they're not thinking about themselves. More often, especially when I do workshops, a lot of folks will say, hey, I haven't actually asked myself these questions in a really long time. What are your personal values? What do you want in 5 years for yourself? What kind of impact do you want to have through your work? More times than not, folks will have done this work maybe when they first got into the workforce. But then after you're there 10, 15 years or so, you kind of start to lose your way. That, and also too, we change as individuals. Certain things that we aspired to, we achieve them, and then you don't know what's next. A lot of folks that I work with, they're kind of at this point in their career where they're like, you know what? I worked so hard to get to this point. I have no idea what I want next. Where do I go from here?
That's where you usually have that change in career.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. I work with a lot of working moms. I've had so many that it's after the first kid. They're like, oh, I worked all these years to get to this point in my career to realize, yeah, this is great and I enjoy this, but like, is this all there is? Now that I have a kid, I feel like I need to have a different impact, especially if I'm choosing to work in my career and to advance in it and have that time not be with my kid, right? I want to model something differently for them, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. So your book comes out in how many days? Or is it out already?
It is out on May 12th, and it is starting to ship a little early, I noticed. I got messages from friends, which is kind of fun.
Awesome. So where can we find your book?
Best place to go would be you can visit my website. There's a link there for the book, and you can order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Hudson, all sorts of booksellers.
And what's your website?
CorrieLo.com, CorrieLo.
When people are buying the book and reading through the book, what do you want them to keep in mind as they're making their way through your book?
Number one thing to keep in mind is that you don't get a gold star for finishing it fast and for implementing everything all at once. It's designed to kind of read through it once and then to go back to whichever culprit really resonates for you the most. And if you were stuck on what culprit, you can actually, there's on my website, there's a free quiz that you could take it'll tell you what your culprit is to focus on.
And you said clarity is the biggest culprit for Fortune 500 executives. Give me one more culprit that you feel like people usually don't pay attention to.
Oh, hands down, it's always lack of conditioning. That's, I would say, depending on the audience, the lack of conditioning sometimes comes out ahead of lack of clarity.
It's funny you say that because I always find it that when I do take a step to focus on my own physical conditioning and consistency, everything else follows.
Yes.
And I always wonder like why that is.
Well, because your body has what it needs to be able to give you the energy necessary to be able to have a higher capacity for decision making, for all the above. Even something as simple as making sure that you have intentional silence or solitude, or maybe you meditate or something every day to create that space for your brain to kind of wind down and to process everything that's happening can make such a big impact on decision making.
Yeah, I heard a really, really good, I don't remember the exact statistic, but something like meditating for like 5 to 10 minutes a day can, I don't know, benefit your body or mind tremendously over like the course of just a week.
Oh yeah, no, it's I like to describe it as meditation is kind of like exercising your brain because you're training it to be able to drop stuff that isn't important, right? You're training it to be able to focus. It's not for everybody. There's a lot of other different like practices and modalities that you could try instead of meditation. But the most important thing is to figure out a way that you have that kind of space to focus.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, where can we find you? Where can we follow you? Can we find your book? How can people get in contact with you?
Perfect. Thank you. Best place to find me would be my website, www.corrielo.com. And then if you want to find me on social media, I'm most active on LinkedIn and YouTube, but you can find me everywhere. I am Corrie Lo.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for coming by, Corrie. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
And I can't wait to get a hand on that book.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's a wrap, guys. This is why we do what we do at NOM Studios, making big stories simple. If this hits home, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay creative, stay hungry, stay NOM.